Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Insider, brought to you, as ever, by Vanishing Inc. My guest today is a science magician and performs to over 50,000 people a year. You'll have probably seen his amazing social media videos, especially the replication of Copperfield's Bermuda illusion. If you haven't, I'll link them into the show notes. You must all follow him on social media. It's Dr Matt Pritchard. Matt, how are you this afternoon?
I'm great. Thanks for inviting me, Damien.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for being in my time zone. A great deal of guests we have on the show are from that there America, which is much more inconvenient for me with two small children and a puppy. So thank you for that.
I think it's worse when you're talking to people in Australia, because that's a very early start.
Yes, no, I haven't had any Australian. No, we have Ben Harris. He was on. What's your magic origin story? You've got 53 seconds.
It's dull. A kid got a magic kit for Christmas, magic book, and was terrible at magic, and all my friends hated it, and I just persisted and got to the point where I was okay at it. So that's a dull side. Side tangent, I first started really with escapology and realised I was too small and scrawny to actually make it look anywhere near decent. So I soon moved on from that.
Now, looking down your Twitter feed, it appears that you've stolen Josh's balance trick, except you're not using any props and you're doing it for real. How does that kind of balancing work?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So I've been doing this for many years, and so it's definitely a case of independent discovery. So
Josh cheats.
Whereas I do physics, so I've been balancing cans, and it's a known stunt. If you have a half-filled can of drink, it will balance on its side, and you do that. And I was just playing around once and realised I could balance it on top of a bottle lid, and then from there you start adding more and more, and gradually end up with some sort of elaborate sculptures, a bit like what Josh is doing as well, and they just just a great visual feast.
Yeah, but Josh cheats. Let's talk about, in a lovely way, the use of surprise to grab people's attention that you talk about in one of your talks. How do you think magicians can make more of the element of surprise?
Yeah, it's a great thing. I think even though we've got this wonderful tool of having surprise at our disposal as magicians, first of all, it's a great way of grabbing audiences' attention. So I work a lot with schools, particularly with teenage groups who just, when they come in, there's arms across, they're sort of leaning back, they're not interested at all. And the moment you do something surprising or counterintuitive, you see them almost instantly, their body posture changes and they sit up. And so by constantly defying their expectations, it's grabbing and drawing them in. So surprise is this wonderful hook. I think though, you could just set off some fireworks. It's bonfire night tonight, and that would surprise them. But I think surprise also, in hindsight, sort of has to make sense. It's a bit like I was talking to a friend recently about the differences between magic and comedy, and when you have a good joke, in hindsight, you see the punchline coming. You can see all the elements, and that's what makes a brilliant joke, is to realise it's just that reframing of what you're expecting. And I think it's the same for magic. You could just, like say, set off fireworks, make something appear from nowhere. But the best surprise is one which has almost been subtly telegraphed before it even happens. And then when it does, you suddenly have that moment of, that's clever, that's clever. Yeah. And I think sometimes we as magicians forget to almost preempt the surprise by laying down those little mental breadcrumbs. And I think that makes a especially powerful surprise.
Yeah, no, very good point. You say that humans are too quick to try and work out how something works. What do you think we can do to delay that innate curiosity to go from how you say wow to how? How can magicians prolong the wow more effectively? And, as a bonus question, is there anything we can do to remove the how?
Yeah, I think, and this may be answering both questions at the same time, I think often as magicians we set ourselves up on an elevated status, and we're going, look, aren't we clever? And the moment you do that, either our audiences switch off because we realise actually we're not as clever as them and it's just pointless us engaging, or it becomes a competitive environment of you're trying to outdo the magician. And when you're doing that, you're wanting to sort of figure that out. You're wanting to catch them out. Whereas actually, I think the best magic is always done in collaboration. So you're not there, wow, look at me, wow, look at the trick. It's like, come join us, let's stand side by side and let's enjoy this together and discover it together. And I think when you set it up like that, you haven't got that competitive trying to outdo people. And also, I think there's a very dramatic pause.
It is. I'm on the edge of my seat.
We can always edit that one out. So a thought just on the top of my head. Like, I'm not going to come up with an amazing, profound surprise. No, it's gone. Completely gone. But come back to me in an hour's time.
No, go, just give me a call. It's fine. In your TEDx talk, you tell a story about your daughter coming back from nursery saying she can't wear her dinosaur trainers as they're for boys. And my daughter had a similar experience looking at Lego in the shop, and it was gender coordinated, and a boy's one caught her eye, and she said, "Oh no, I can't get that one, Daddy. It's for boys." It's obviously goes on everywhere, and I can see an analogy with magic there. So, what do you think we should or could be doing to educate more females that magic isn't just for boys?
Yeah, I think some of it gets back to what I was just saying about the status thing, and often one of the appeals is it, particularly when you're often the origin stories for many magicians is we're sort of slightly socially awkward kids and teenagers. Some of us don't change in that respect anyway, but it's magic gives us a power, and I think that's often something that appeals to boys more than girls, is that sort of alphaness. And magic doesn't have to be that way, and I think one way is to take away that arrogance that sometimes comes with magic. I think also
that would generally be quite a good idea, I think.
Yeah, I think also we rarely as magicians explore broadening our art in terms of just tricks and fooling and drawing in other elements, and I think that would appeal to a wider cross-section where you can make it more yourself, you can put more of your own interests in as well.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I just about scraped physics GCSE, so bear with me with this one. You talk about magic being the creation of a quantum state of both knowing and not knowing. Would you expand on that, please?
Yeah, so maybe it's a slightly physicsy, flowery language. For me, when I talk about a quantum state, it means that different worlds can exist at the same time. And I think wonder often lives on that knife edge. Like, you go one way and you know what's happening, and if you go the other, you're in mystery territory and not knowing. It's almost like the end of a chapter in a book, and you get to it and you've got that blank page. So you know where you've come from, and you're often on a bit of a cliffhanger, or you've got a hint of what's to come, but the next chapter hasn't begun yet. And so in that talk I was talking about that quantum state of being but yet you don't know. Often it's also referred to as a liminal space. Liminal space is like almost again between the beginning and the ending of something. And I think that's a great place to be in, of recognizing there's a humility to wonder, recognizing you don't know all the answers, but also there's possibility there of exploring new things and discovering new things. It's an openness to discovery, an openness to change. There's a playfulness there as well.
Okay. You talk about your preferred way of studying or teaching being about finding links between things rather than giving answers to questions. And do you think there's some sort of analogy with magic there that can be applied to how magicians should look for links between things? And how can we start to do that?
Yeah, I think as soon as you give the answer or the correct answer, it will often become a full stop. Whereas when you show connections and links to other possibilities, that then stops being a full stop. It becomes a bit of a springboard, and it leaps people on. And I think one of the things we do as magicians is we sort of dance with the impossible. We waltz in and out, and by doing that, we can often share with our audience, we can lift their eyes up and make them dream or be open to new possibilities.
You've said that magic always asks questions. How do you think as magicians we can ask better questions?
Yeah, so I interviewed a few years back the theatre practitioner Vincent Gambini and performer, and he talks about magic being philosophy in action. And I think as magicians we've got this wonderful tool where we can explore so many profound questions, so much philosophy when we're talking about making things appear and disappear. We're talking about things like origins and existence and permanence. We can talk about transformation. We can talk about sort of life and death, with things being cut and restored and destroyed. I think we've got so much. It's almost visual philosophy that we do on occasions, and we can explore those. I think we often, and myself included, often get caught up in the nitty gritty of the sleight or the gimmick or the latest effect, and we often forget there's a much bigger meaning around magic.
So how can we start looking for that bigger meaning? Because yeah, you're right. People are thinking about a sleight or getting the new shiny thing from vanishingmagic.com. So how do you stop doing that? How do you get deeper or start that process?
I think one way is to look at magic as more than just theatrical magic. And when I talk about theatrical magic, it's what we do. We're conjurers, we cheat, but actually look at what is magic, like across history, across cultures. I think that can open us. And I know there's some differences, but we do share lots of common ground there. I think also just by being aware of other art forms and drawing them into what we're doing, being aware of what's going on socially and culturally as well, we can, like I said, get a very narrow focus on the latest gadget.
Sure. What do you think's an important thing that a scientist could explain to a magician to help improve their magic in some way?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a wonderful question. I think one of the first rules you get as a magician is you never repeat a trick. Whereas scientists, we always talk about being repeatable. And I'm just pondering aloud out here is, could we do magic that is repeatable and under test conditions? I think the danger there would be that it ceases to be magic. It becomes a puzzle to figure out.
Does it always? Does it, like with card under box or something? Is it then a puzzle, or is it becoming more and more impossible, loading it again and again and again every time, and they still Do you know what I mean? I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I think when you repeat things and often you interchange methods and have methods that cancel out, that can be incredibly powerful. And I think that's partly what I have in mind. I think as soon as you sometimes say, okay, we're going to make this object move and I'm going to put a glass dome over the top of it and I'm going to seal it, that maybe that starts becoming more puzzle-like. But then I'm also thinking about that famous quote of Arthur Conan Doyle that he put into the Sherlock Holmes books, is about eliminating all possibilities except for one, and then whatever, even if it's improbable, is the likelihood. And I think sometimes when we overprove things, we can force our audiences thinking into the route we want to avoid them going.
Yeah. What are some books from sciencey magic people that listeners that are interested in the crossover between those fields should look to read?
So I love going through old Victorian amusement books.
Okay.
They mix. Some are written for people who just want to do sort of sciencey demonstrations. Others are just home amusements, party things, stunts you can do, and they're just wonderful. About a third of the things in the pages are probably illegal nowadays because they use loads of stuff using mercury and other poisonous chemicals. A third just reflects the obsessions of the day, so it's all steam engines and things like that. But a third is just largely being forgotten, and so I think I would encourage people just to go to some old books of maybe not ones that don't have the word magic on, but something that party tricks and stunts and amusements, and you'll find forgotten gems of barbettes and things like that, which can be turned into tricks. And people like Richard Wiseman's done his 101 bets you can win, I think is the book, and they're full of things like that as well.
Okay, great. You make small, amazing illusions on their social medias. How did that start?
I was doing a tiny bit before lockdown hit. I love following things like the Best Illusion of the Year contest, and I love those optical illusions that sort of have a bit of science to them, a bit of maths and sort of slight magic edge, partly because I think I can start incorporating them into my own work, and also some can be actually translated quite easily into a magic effect. And I saw one of those 3D printed shapes that you look in a mirror and it shows a different object, and I was thinking, I'd love to do that. I haven't got a 3D printer, but I've got a load of toilet rolls, so I cut one and managed you can make what's called an ambiguous arrow from a toilet roll, and it's ridiculously simple, 4 cuts, and everyone's got them around the home. And that caught on for a bit, and then that gave me a bit of confidence to start doing more things. And then when lockdown hit, as with so many of us, our work just disappeared overnight.
Sure.
And there's a real moment of so much of who I was caught up in what I do. And because I couldn't do what I loved doing, I was a little bit, okay, what to do? And so I started just playing around with optical illusions in my office and building things, and then starting to share that through social media, and that became the audience that probably deep down that I crave, and the response. But I think something amazing happened in that finally I felt I had confidence as a creator, as a magician, which, even though I've been in magic for close to 30 years, I felt I could adapt things as opposed to come up with brand new concepts. And once you're doing that and you've got confidence, then things started spiraling out of control, in the sense of making more and more elaborate illusions. And I also found myself in quite a niche, in the sense, or niche if you're listening from abroad, that what I was doing was often grand illusions, but they were on a very small scale. And that meant I could draw from techniques from stage magic and also close-up magic, and at the same time exploit the fact I'm using a camera lens, which, although I don't use any editing trickery, a camera acts a bit like a stage that has got wings and the arch, and you can very easily restrict the angle and the lighting and all the conditions that you can on a stage. And I think that those three things, stage techniques, controlling the field, and being able to incorporate close-up magic, plus some new science approaches, which I don't think's been used in magic before. They all combined and create these little miniature 20-second videos that I make.
I know it's like picking a favourite child, but is there one that's got a particular soft spot in your heart more than the others?
Oh, I don't know. It is hard. It's often the latest one that they're working on. You mentioned the Bermuda Triangle one that I did for David Copperfield's Illusion. And to be honest, I hated doing that.
Why?
I love the result, but what I really struggled, partly anyone who works with water, it's horrible because things get wet and it's just so much more of a nightmare to work with. But I think also what I was doing, I was constantly being guided of having to go back to, I need to make it look like the original.
Right.
Even though the methods are totally different. And so that guiding force was, each time I wanted to go a different route or take a shortcut, it was pushing me back. And everything I tried didn't work. It was like 3-4 times, and so many setbacks with that, and the pressure I was just putting on myself. It just meant it wasn't always the most fun process.
Yeah.
I think the other ones that I've really enjoyed is the ones where I had a bit more freedom to explore an idea and play with it. So in answer to your question, I think one of the ones I love the most is something I call the IKEA block. It's just a kid's like ABC stacking block that you place a mirror behind, and then instantly you lift the mirror up and there's a second block sat behind the mirror. It's very much like the Twilight effect that people like Daniel Cross and Paul Harris popularised many years ago, and loved reading their stuff as a teenager. And so that's a favourite.
Thank you. Are there any sciencey magic people from history that you'd wished you'd got the chance to see do their thing?
So I think the name Robert Houdin always comes up, and it's a name that is somewhat controversial at times, of how much of what he claimed to do was actually genuine, how much was a bit of hyperbole. So I'd love to meet him, particularly more from his work with the clockwork side of things, and I'd love to see a bit more behind that. But I think one of the people I'd really like to meet would be Nikola Tesla, who's not a magician, but was often called a wizard, and he was, like a lot of innovators, was almost at the wrong time for his ideas.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of love to have a conversation with him. I mean, it's interesting sort of looking back, particularly to 19th century science. There was a real crossover between scientists portraying themselves as wizards and magicians, and also magicians then employing the latest sciencey themes. So you've got again, Robert Houdin, I think, was using it, or in his theatre they were having illusions inspired by X-rays, which was sort of the latest new fangled gadget for a while. And so you've got this like weird swapping over of presentations between the two fields.
Yeah, how cool. You're coming to the session in January.
Oh yes, I am.
What are you looking forward to about that?
So I have always wanted to make it along, but just timings haven't worked out. So I'm just looking forward to just genuinely meeting magicians who are serious about what they're doing, seeing the lineup. There's a number of people I just want to just have a chat with, and I think that's the real strength of something like the session. It's not, magicians aren't put on pedestals and kept behind glass walls. You can actually properly interact with them and chat with them, and I think often the real power of conferences is not necessarily on the stage. It's in the queue for coffee.
Yeah,
is when you're having the chat. So that's what I'm most looking forward to.
And can you give us any clues about what you're going to be sharing there?
Well, I think I've been persuaded to tip how I made the boat appear in the Bermuda Triangle. So I'll be talking through that process. So my plan for my talk is I'm going to call it Impractical Magic, because so much of what I do, no one's ever going to use as such. The methods are just a little bit stupid and ridiculously over-engineered. However, I think the real interest to people is going to be the creative journey. So I've been documenting all the false starts and dead ends and how things are made, and so I can talk through that process and what I think has made quite an effective 20-second piece of magic video. And then there's going to be just some really practical techniques of things I've discovered just almost by accident of how best to craft things. So if you're interested in using like little neodymium magnets or black art and those nitty-gritty things, there'll be some practical takeaways as well.
Fantastic. I can't wait, because I've got no idea. It has me completely fooled. We are almost out of time, Matt, but we always end the show with 4 quick-fire questions. Are you ready?
Well, based on my previous slow response to the last one, maybe not, but we'll see how we go.
Let's give it a go. Favourite pizza topping?
Pepperoni.
Favourite movie?
I love Moon, which is just a wonderful story. I love any movie which has the twists and turns, and then you can watch it again immediately and pick up so much more.
Just like you were talking about at the beginning with the narrative breadcrumbs. Favourite personal people who make music?
Ooh, gonna say Lemon Jelly.
Okay, you can say Lemon Jelly.
Yeah, don't do it now, but they were certainly very instrumental back in the day when I was properly getting into music.
And finally, who would you rather fight? 1 massive Andy or 100 tiny Joshuas?
I think Andy.
Okay, fair enough. Joshua's normally the more popular opinion, but I like the fact that you go the other way.
I get the impression that Joshua is very determined, and I think 100, you're just going to keep batting little mini Joshes away, aren't you? And they're just going to constantly come back. You're not just going to squash one, they're going to keep resurrecting and clambering on you, I think.
I love
one punch to massive Andy and he's down. I think 100 Joshes, no.
I love the fact that you've given that consideration. Matt, should people want to have a look at your amazing videos, where is the best place to send them?
So I tend to pepper social media with the same stuff, which is bad, but Instagram is Science Magician, so is TikTok and Twitter. So I could do with some more Instagram followers. So
okay, there you go.
Go to Instagram.
Instagram posse in the house. Go and follow Science Magician and enjoy his tiny, impractical, beautiful illusions. Dr. Matt Pritchard, thank you so much for giving me your time this afternoon. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to meeting you properly at the session in January.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for your great questions, Damien.
Thank you. Take care.